Borley Borlstein here, and damn it, I saw The Lighthouse and I don't know what the fuck it was about. It's one of those kinds of movies where you have a lot of intrigue that's fostered early on in the film, but then things start to break down. You start questioning characters' sanity. You start seeing things that are just abnormal in the regular daily life sense. You start seeing things that are fantastical, and you start seeing things that are surreal. And in that way, the film basically kind of goes off the rails in the second half. And it's hard to kind of understand the film in a meaningful way that satisfies all that we see in terms of coming to an explanation of what the film is ultimately about. But I have some ideas. I guess an early overview of the film in terms of the quality. I like the way it was shot. I heard I don't even think the aspect ratio is 4:3. I heard it was like 3:3.5 or something. I'm not quite sure, but I thought it worked really well for this film because the way the ratio is, it's very claustrophobic. You don't really have a lot to see, which is kind of similar to the character's plight on the island. You know, there's two people, they're managing a lighthouse on an island. They don't really have a lot to look at or deal with. So you kind of are drawn into how they feel with the chosen aspect ratio. And also, it kind of, maybe I'm stretching this a little bit, but the aspect ratio is kind of reminiscent of a lighthouse itself. You know, it extends very high in the sky and very low to the ground. You know, and that's kind of how the aspect ratio is. I mean, if you see it on a traditional uh, theater screen, if you see it at home, you probably won't have the same effect because it won't seem as tall. But in the theater, I think the effect worked nicely. Uh, I want to say one thing about the film. I heard this was shot on film, I believe, and it shows in the beginning. There is one huge issue I have in that there's a lot of light intensity differentiations in the same shot. So, for example, to explain this, if you have a smartphone, have you ever had the light adaptive function turned on? It'll change the brightness of your screen depending on your surroundings. But this one was like constantly oscillating, and it was honestly hurting my eyes in the beginning of the film, and I was very happy when it went away. So it doesn't go throughout the whole film, and I think it's a cool effect just for me for a 2 hour film. Get that shit the fuck out of there because I'm gonna be vomiting from a migraine if you keep doing that to me. So that didn't stay, luckily, but boy, was it awful when I first saw it. But I think it's a cool effect. It just doesn't have place in a 2 hour movie if you do it consistently. But they didn't, so I think I'm a little too harsh in that capacity. The sound design was excellent. The film, I think, is employs sound as a menace without being annoying. The sound is foreboding and creepy, and there's one scene like, but you come to expect it and you live with that uncertainty, or not the uncertainty, but with that anxiety that it elicits. In the beginning, there's this big horn that's constantly going off, and it goes off for quite a while actually. And the film tries to make the horn seem annoying, but I actually was comfortable with it. But the main character finds it very frustrating. But eventually, either it stops going off, or they stop doing their job, or they just stop having it in the background. I don't know. But there are sounds in the movie that are meant to be annoying that are going on constantly. This constant kind of, the crashing of the waves, the creaking of the house, and I feel like they're meant to be annoying, but they end up just being kind of menacing without being annoying. So I thought that was really well done, actually. And there's one scene in the film where the sound like kind of all cuts out and it's really quiet, and that's the scariest fucking scene in the whole movie. It's really frightening. So overall, there's not really a way you can, I think, rate this movie. It's one of those like multiple interpretation, crazy shit goes on. So you kind of have to just be into something that you're going to walk away with very confused. but there's a lot to sink your teeth in, but you won't have any definitive answers. And there's nothing that you can really point to that satisfies all the weirdness that you see. I'm going to try to go through three interpretations that I believe exist. So the most base interpretation is what we see without the fantastical elements. So we have a relationship between a person who is in training to be a lighthouse keeper, aka a wiki, and then we have a person who is an abusive asshole who basically does no work and then jacks off onto the light bulb when he's maintaining it at night. Presumably he works the third shift and he makes sure that the light is going during the night. And to that effect, Robert Pattinson's character, the trainee, he basically gets all the shit jobs. He has to make sure the horn has cold to blare loud noises. He has to clean the roof and then watch Willem Dafoe fuck a hole in his bed. So there's this kind of clearly power dynamic that Willem Dafoe's character is using in the film to use or lord over Robert Pattinson's character in a sexually gratifying manner. And that culminates in, I think, one shot and then in one scene. So the scene that it culminates in, obviously this is big spoilers. So if you care about spoilers, this movie, I can't even give it context. It's so fucking weird. Whatever, go watch it. But yeah, now we're gonna get into something that's actually spoiler. The two characters come to a heated disagreement over their plight that they have. Robert Pattinson says that he hates Willem Dafoe's cooking, and Willem Dafoe is not just offended by this, but he looks very emotionally hurt. And he's like, "Oh, but you like my lobster, right?" And he's saying it over and over again. And then the guy, he just doesn't say he likes his cooking. And then Willem Dafoe gets up and does like a 30-second monologue where he basically tells Poseidon to like kill Robert Pattinson and turn his body into the ocean. And then after all that, Robert Pattinson says, "Oh, your cooking's not that bad," and it's kind of played off for laughs, which is what you would expect in a very bad relationship where you get to this head, you make somebody upset, the person lashes out at you, and then you try to like, oh, blah 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 whatever, and sure, it's played off for laughs, but nobody's laughing because then later on the characters get into a big fight, and there's actually a few scenes because the film gets metaphorically, or not metaphorically, but you got to fill in the gaps to understand what's happening. So Willem Dafoe is chasing Robert Pattinson with an axe, and Willem Dafoe tells him, he gaslights him and says that Robert Pattinson chased him with the axe. And at this point, we don't know what's going on, so I don't really know who to believe. This is last like 20 minutes of the film or so, and the axe is in the table, and the two characters are standing up, and Willem Dafoe's character, the axe looks like it's his dick's just sticking out there, In earlier scenes of the movie, Willem Dafoe sexually exposed himself to Robert Pattinson in ways that were kind of akin to, who's that comedian guy that yelled about the Jews or whatever? I don't know. I forget the guy's name. Louis C.K. Is that his name? Yeah, that guy. Where now at this point in the film, he's kind of just standing there and he's bare in a sense. And then the two characters fight, and Robert Pattinson wins the battle of the two characters, and it doesn't. Robert Pattinson is over Willem Dafoe, and he says, "Turn over." And after that, Robert Pattinson is leading Willem Dafoe outside the lighthouse house like a dog. But what happened in between him turning him into a dog and him when beating him up in the fight? Presumably, it was a reversal of sexual domination in the relationship. And then Robert Pattinson buries him, but then I think he gets unburied. I forget. He goes up to the lighthouse and screams and then gets eaten by seagulls. Really strange. So that's the sexual power struggle kind of interpretation of the film. But then there's another thing going on too. There's the kind of fantastical one involving mermaids and Poseidon and strange shit. I don't even know. This one begins right away. Robert Pattinson gets to the house. He goes straight to the bed. He finds a hole in the bed, picks out the lint in the bed, and finds a mermaid statue. And then shortly on, he has a dream about him going out to the water with some logs, and there's a mermaid that screams at him. He sees a mermaid on the shore that screams at him. He jacks off to thoughts of the mermaid slash a man that he let die. I believe. I don't think he killed him. I believe he let him die. Is what happened. And then he breaks the statue. All the while, Willem Dafoe's character is like praising the lighthouse thing, and maybe he is a squid man. There's a few scenes where supposedly he turns into a squid or jacks off to the light bulb, something like that. And then the kind of climax to the to the fantastical is when I believe Willem Dafoe does his plea to Poseidon to kill Robert Pattinson's character, and it comes true. He So after Willem Dafoe's character makes that plea to Poseidon to kill Willem Dafoe makes the plea, and Robert Pattinson then basically, I don't think he dies that way, but he does get eaten by birds the same way Prometheus. So it's very strange. There's like mermaid shit. I don't fucking know. I'm not even telling you the plot, so none of this probably makes any sense. And then there's another interpretation, which is allegorical. In the allegorical interpretation, we have Robert Pattinson's character, who is a stand-in for Prometheus, and we have Willem Dafoe's character, who's a stand-in for Zeus. And they're basically kind of just like in this power struggle, but Prometheus is pretty subservient. And then eventually, Willem Dafoe's character, Zeus, is hoarding the light. He locks the door. He won't let him in. He's being an asshole. And eventually, Robert Pattinson's character is able to kill Willem Dafoe and then steal the light. And then when this happens, immediately afterwards, he falls down some stairs. And then somehow he ends up outside and he's getting eaten by seagulls. Same way Prometheus is doomed to get his liver like eaten out by an eagle, and it regenerates every day. So there's an allegorical interpretation that goes beyond knowledge of what we see in the film and requires some mythological understanding. I mean, the fantastical one requires that too, but we see those things happen. We hear the name Poseidon evoked. We don't have to do much thinking to understand what he's getting at. But the allegorical one, we need to understand the outside sources to understand how they fit in this narrative. And that's what I meant early on when I said that it's hard to come up with an interpretation of the film that satisfies all the different things that we see, because so many of them are so different in terms of what there is to get out of it. So, I mean, as far as sexual relationships go between two men, or allegorical relationships between God and I think Prometheus was a Titan. I don't really know much about Greek mythology. It's all stupid anyway. Who cares? But it makes for an interesting story, I suppose. There is one question I have about the film that I don't see anybody on Reddit or anywhere asking, and I gotta ask it: is how did the bird get in the closed cistern to bloody up the water? How? How did that happen? And also, what was the seagull warning Robert Pattinson's character about? He was warning him about the horn, warning him about the cistern, but he was trying to clean the cistern after it was already damp. I don't know. The only thing that I could believe is Willem Dafoe intentionally put the dead bird in the cistern to force Robert Pattinson's character to drink alcohol. Kind of forcing the camaraderie that he wanted, the homosexual relationship that I think Willem Dafoe's character wanted. That's what I believe. So I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, there's many ways to interpret the film, and I think probably all of them are valid because I have no fucking clue. The movie has so many things go on that are never confirmed in a satisfying sense for the audience to feel that they can conclude that they're correct. So in the end, when I first viewed the film, I would say it was about a 5 out of 10 despite how well it's made and despite how good the acting is. The dialogue's pretty good, the accents are great, and it's funny too. I would just say that you need to be in the right mindset and you need to really appreciate ambiguous allegorical films to like it. If that's interesting to you, then it's a must see. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully you learned something by listening to me because I got no fucking idea. And I don't know. Maybe somebody can yell at me in the comments to explain what the plot was about because I was fucking lost. Okay, thank you.